A single moment changed everything for the most feared man in the city. Before we dive deeper into Dominic Moretti's story, welcome to the channel. If you're enjoying this kind of storytelling, make sure to like, share, drop a comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep bringing tales like this to life. Now, let's continue. Picture this: Dominic Moretti, crime lord, untouchable for nearly 4 decades, sitting perfectly still while his new housemaid examines his ear with a flashlight. Nobody gets that close to Dominic Moretti. Ever. But Elena Cruz isn't like the others who work in his mansion. She's looking at something the specialists missed. 37 years of silence are about to end in the most unexpected way possible. Now, you need to understand something about Dominic before we go any further. This man built an empire without hearing a single word spoken in his presence. Every conversation he ever had was read from the lips. Each command he gave was delivered through carefully rehearsed gestures and written notes. His enemies feared him not despite his deafness, but because of how he compensated for it. Nothing escaped his attention. A slight shift in posture told him when someone was lying. The way a man's fingers trembled revealed fear better than any stammered confession. While others relied on the shakiness in a voice, Dominic watched the pulse point on a neck, the dilation of pupils, the almost imperceptible backward lean of someone preparing to run. He weaponized his disability into something terrifying. 4 decades, the city's underworld whispered about the silent Don who never missed a detail. Meetings happened in complete quiet, with only the scratching of pen on paper breaking the tension. His men learned sign language or they didn't last. Loyalty was demonstrated through patience, through the willingness to communicate on his terms. But here's what nobody knew. Deep in medical files locked away in Dr. Marcus Caldwell's private office, there was a diagnosis that didn't quite add up. Genetic hearing loss, the papers said. Irreversible damage to the auditory nerves. Born this way, destined to stay this way. Except Dominic wasn't born deaf. The hearing disappeared when he was 8 years old, suddenly and completely. One day he could hear his mother singing in the kitchen. The next morning, the world went silent. Doctors were consulted. Specialists flew in from Europe. Everyone agreed, permanent, untreatable, accept it and move on. So he did. Over time, the boy who once heard laughter and music became the man who ruled through observation and calculated violence. The disability became his legend. Who could deceive someone who watched everything with that kind of intensity? Elena Cruz arrived on a Tuesday morning in September. She came through the service entrance like every other employee, background checked 6 ways from Sunday, references verified, criminal record clean. The head of household staff gave her the usual warnings: don't speak unless spoken to. Don't ask questions. Don't ever, under any circumstances, look Dominic Moretti directly in the eyes unless he looks at you first. She nodded at everything, smiled politely, started with the guest bedrooms on the 3rd floor. By Wednesday afternoon, she'd noticed something nobody else had seen in 37 years. The mansion had 43 rooms. Elena cleaned 17 of them in her first 2 days, moving through the space like a ghost. Other staff members had worked there for years without ever seeing Dominic up close. He existed in the East Wing, in meetings that happened behind soundproof doors, emerging only for silent dinners in the formal dining room. But Elena had grown up poor in a household where nothing was wasted, where you fix things instead of replacing them. Her mother taught her to notice the small problems before they became disasters. A loose floorboard. A dripping faucet. The slight tilt in a picture frame that meant the nail was working its way out of the wall. She noticed everything. Thursday morning, she was dusting the library when Dominic walked in. He moved without sound, which should have been impossible for a man his size. Elena felt his presence before she saw him, that predator awareness that makes the hair on your neck stand up. Their eyes met for exactly 2 seconds. She dropped her gaze immediately, remembering the rules. He crossed to the far bookshelf, pulled down a leather-bound volume, and settled into the reading chair by the window. Elena continued working. Careful. Methodical. Don't draw attention. But she watched him the way he watched everyone else. In reflections. In peripheral vision. In the small moments when his focus was elsewhere. That's when she saw it. The way he tilted his head slightly to the left when someone entered a room. How he compensated by turning his whole body to track movement. These weren't the habits of someone completely deaf. They were the behaviors of someone with severe hearing loss in one ear. Her grandfather had done the same thing after the factory accident. Friday, Elena was cleaning the second-floor hallway when Dominic's personal physician arrived. Dr. Marcus Caldwell was everything you'd expect from a man who treated criminals for a living. Expensive suits, dead eyes, the kind of smooth professionalism that came from years of not asking questions. The consultation happened in Dominic's study. Elena knew because she'd been reassigned to polish the silver in the adjacent room. The door was thick, but not thick enough to hide the fact that no voices came through it. Just silence. Then the sound of Dr. Caldwell leaving 30 minutes later. She didn't think much of it until Saturday. That's when she found herself in Dominic's private bathroom, replacing the hand towels, and something caught her eye in the morning light streaming through the window. His cotton swabs in the wastebasket weren't just used. They were stained. Not with the normal pale yellow of ear wax, but with something darker. Older. Compacted. Elena froze. Her mother's voice echoed in her head from childhood. Mija, your brother's ear infection got so bad because nobody looked. Sometimes the solution is simpler than people think. She made a decision that would change everything. Monday morning, Elena did something that should have gotten her fired. Or worse. She knocked on Dominic's study door. His head of security, a brick wall of a man named Vincent, opened it. He looked at her like she'd just spit on the floor. Staff doesn't disturb Mr. Moretti. Elena held up a folded piece of paper. I need to show him something. It's important. Vincent's hand moved toward his jacket. You got a death wish? Please. Her voice didn't shake. Just give him this note. The door opened 90 seconds later. Vincent's expression had changed. He'll see you. 5 minutes. Dominic sat behind a desk that probably cost more than Elena's childhood home. He watched her enter with those calculating eyes that missed nothing. The note lay open in front of him. She'd kept it simple. I think I know why you can't hear. It might not be permanent. Please let me look. He gestured to the chair across from him. Elena sat. Dominic's hands moved in fluid sign language. Vincent translated, his voice flat. Mr. Moretti wants to know what makes you qualified to diagnose what specialists couldn't. I'm not qualified, Elena said, looking directly at Dominic even though it terrified her. But my brother had chronic ear infections as a kid. Impacted wax so severe it blocked everything. 3 different doctors said he had nerve damage. My mother finally took him to a clinic in Mexico, and they removed a blockage the size of a pencil eraser. He could hear perfectly after that. Dominic's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Interest, maybe. Or suspicion. His hands moved again. Vincent spoke. Many doctors have examined Mr. Moretti over the years. I know. Elena leaned forward slightly. But did any of them actually look? Or did they just review the diagnosis from when you were 8 and assume it was correct? Silence stretched between them. Outside, a car alarm went off somewhere in the city. Dominic didn't react to it, but Elena saw him shift his head slightly leftward. That tells again. The one that suggested something other than total deafness. She pressed on. What if someone made a mistake 37 years ago? What if every doctor since then just believed the first diagnosis? It happens more than you'd think. Medical errors, missed details, assumptions built on assumptions. Dominic stared at her for a long moment. Then his hands moved in a single, decisive gesture. Vincent's translation came out reluctant. He'll allow you to examine his ear. Once. If you're wrong, you're done here. Elena nodded. And if I'm right? Dominic's smile was cold and sharp. He signed something that made Vincent uncomfortable. Then, Vincent translated, someone has a lot to answer for. The examination happened that same afternoon in Dominic's private quarters. Elena brought the supplies she'd need, a flashlight, clean towels, warm water, and a bottle of mineral oil from the kitchen. Vincent stood in the corner like a statue, hand resting on his weapon, ready to end her life if this went wrong. Dominic sat in a leather chair positioned near the window. Natural light was crucial. Elena needed to see exactly what she was dealing with. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached. This man had killed people for lesser offenses than touching him without permission. But he remained perfectly still, watching her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "I need to look first," she said softly. "Just to confirm what I think I saw." Dominic tilted his head to the right, offering his left ear. Elena switched on the flashlight and leaned in close. The smell of expensive cologne mixed with something else. Antiseptic, maybe. Years of medical examinations. She angled the light into his ear canal. What she saw made her breath catch. "Mr. Moretti," she whispered, "when was the last time someone actually cleaned your ears? Not examined them. Cleaned them." His eyebrow raised. He pulled back and signed a question. Vincent translated, "Dr. Caldwell handles all medical matters." "But cleaning?" Elena pressed. "Did he ever remove the buildup? Or just look and take notes?" Dominic's expression shifted. The question had clearly never occurred to him. He signed again, fingers moving with sharp precision. Vincent's voice came out tight. "Only examinations. Never cleaning." Elena felt rage building in her chest. 37 years. 3 decades of silence because nobody thought to perform the most basic maintenance. Or worse, someone deliberately avoided it. "There's a blockage," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Severe compaction. It's like concrete there. I can't even see your eardrum." Dominic went very still. The kind of stillness that preceded violence. But it wasn't directed at her. His eyes had gone distant, calculating. Pieces clicking into place. He signed rapidly. Vincent hesitated before translating. "Can you remove it?" "I think so," Elena said. "But it'll take time. The blockage is old. Really old. If I rush it, I could damage the canal or push it deeper. We need to soften it first with oil, let it sit, then work carefully." She met Dominic's eyes. "This might hurt. And there's no guarantee it'll work. If there's actual nerve damage underneath the blockage, removing it won't help. But if the only problem is the compaction..." Dominic cut her off with a sharp gesture. His hands moved in a statement, not a question. Vincent's translation was barely above a whisper. "Do it. Now." Elena nodded. She poured warm mineral oil onto a cotton ball and approached his ear. "This is going to feel strange." What she didn't say was what she was really thinking. Someone did this to you on purpose. Someone wanted you deaf. The oil went in first. Elena tilted Dominic's head and let the warm liquid seep into his ear canal, softening decades of compacted wax. He didn't flinch, didn't move, but she saw his jaw tighten. This was a man who'd been shot twice and never made a sound. A little discomfort was nothing. They waited 15 minutes. Vincent checked his watch 3 times. Elena kept her breathing steady, praying she hadn't just made a fatal mistake. If this failed, she'd be lucky to just lose her job. "Okay," she finally said. "I'm going to start the extraction. Tell me if the pain becomes unbearable." Dominic's eyes flicked to Vincent, who translated the sign language response, "There is no unbearable." Elena used a curette, working with painstaking slowness. The blockage came out in pieces, dark and hardened, each fragment representing years of neglect. She worked for 20 minutes, removing layer after layer, her hand cramping from the precision required. Then something shifted. A larger piece came free, and Dominic's entire body went rigid. His hand shot up, gripping the arm of the chair hard enough that his knuckles went white. Elena froze, certain she'd hurt him. But when he looked at her, his expression wasn't pain. It was shock. He'd heard something. Elena's heart hammered as she continued, even more carefully now. Another piece came loose. Then another. The canal was clearing, revealing tissue that hadn't seen air in almost 4 decades. Dominic's breathing changed. His eyes widened. He turned his head slightly, and Elena saw the exact moment it happened. The moment sound returned. His own heartbeat, probably. The rustle of fabric as Vincent shifted position. The distant traffic outside the window. The mechanical hum of the air conditioning. All of it flooding in at once after 37 years of absolute silence. If you're hooked by Dominic Moretti's story so far, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who loves a good tale, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep uncovering stories like this. Now, let's get back to Dominic. Dominic stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. The sound made him turn toward it, startled. He took a step, and his footfall echoed on the hardwood. Another step. Another. Each one producing a noise he'd forgotten existed. Elena watched him walk to the window, press his palm against the glass. His chest rose and fell rapidly. Was he hearing his own breathing? The thud of his pulse in his ears? He spun toward Vincent. His mouth opened, and for the first time in Elena's presence, Dominic Moretti spoke. His voice was rough, unpracticed, the vocal cords rusty from disuse. "Say something." Vincent looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Boss." Dominic's face transformed. Not quite a smile, but close. Something that might have been joy or might have been fury or might have been both tangled together into something Elena couldn't name. He heard it. After 37 years of reading lips, he actually heard the word. Then his expression went cold. Deadly cold. Because if Elena could fix this in one afternoon with oil and patience, then every doctor who'd examined him for the past 3 decades had either been incompetent or complicit. Someone had stolen his hearing. And now Dominic Moretti was going to find out who. The world was so loud it physically hurt. Dominic stood at the window, both hands pressed against the glass, trying to process the sensory assault. Every tiny sound felt like an explosion. The clock on the wall ticked like a hammer striking an anvil. Vincent's breathing sounded like wind rushing through a tunnel. Outside, cars honked and brakes squealed, and somewhere a dog barked, and it was all too much, too fast, too overwhelming. He'd imagined this moment as a child, dreamed of it during those first silent years when he still hoped the hearing might return. But he'd never anticipated the chaos. In his fantasies, sound was gentle, musical, beautiful. Reality was assault. "Mr. Moretti?" Elena's voice came from behind him. He spun toward it, and the movement of his own clothing created a whisper of fabric that made him flinch. "You need to sit down. Your brain isn't used to processing auditory information. It'll take time to adjust." He heard every syllable, the slight accent in her speech, the concern beneath her words. For 37 years, he'd only known what people chose to show him on their faces. Now he could hear the truth in their voices. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Dominic moved back to the chair, and the sound of his footsteps seemed impossibly loud. How did people function like this? How did they concentrate when the world never stopped screaming at them? He touched his ear, the one Elena had worked on. The skin felt tender, but not damaged. Just sensitive. Awakened. "The other ear," he said, his own voice still strange and unfamiliar in his head. "Do it now." Elena shook her head. "You need rest. Your brain is overloaded. We should wait at least a day before." "Now." His tone left no room for negotiation. If one ear could be restored, he needed both. Needed the full range of hearing. Needed to understand exactly what had been taken from him. She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay. But this one might be worse. If both ears were blocked, the compaction could be even more severe." Dominic didn't care. He tilted his head to the left, offering his right ear. Elena prepared fresh oil and began the process again. This time, Dominic could hear everything she did. The liquid pouring. Her careful breathing as she concentrated. The tiny scrape of the curette against the blockage. It took longer. The right ear had accumulated even more buildup, layers upon layers of neglect. Elena worked for 45 minutes, removing fragments that felt like they were surgically attached. Then, finally, the second canal cleared. Sound rushed in from both sides now, creating depth and dimension Dominic had never experienced. Stereo. That's what they called it. He could pinpoint exactly where Vincent stood without looking. Could hear Elena's elevated heart rate and know she was nervous. He could hear lies now. Fear. Hesitation. Truth. Dominic Moretti had just become twice as dangerous as he'd ever been. The first thing Dominic did after Elena left was call Dr. Marcus Caldwell. He used his voice for the first time in a phone conversation, the words feeling strange on his tongue. "My office. 1 hour. Not negotiable." Caldwell's response came through the receiver, tinny but clear. "Dominic, you're speaking. 1 hour." Dominic ended the call before the doctor could ask questions. He needed time to think, to process, to prepare for what came next. Vincent stood nearby, still looking shell-shocked. "Boss, what do you need?" "My medical files. Every examination Caldwell performed over the last 20 years. Everything in his office that relates to my hearing." Vincent pulled out his phone. "I'll have them within 30 minutes. Dominic walked to his private bathroom and stared at himself in the mirror. Same face. Same scar above his left eyebrow from a fight when he was 19. Same cold eyes that had watched men beg for mercy. But everything feels different now. He turned on the faucet. The sound of running water was somehow both mundane and miraculous. He'd ordered people killed in bathrooms like this, never hearing their final pleas, never catching the desperation in their voices. He'd only seen it on their faces. How many had tried to bargain with words he couldn't hear? The rage built slowly, deliberately. Dominic had learned long ago to control his emotions, to never let anger make him sloppy. But this was different. This wasn't business betrayal or territorial disputes. This was personal. Someone had stolen 37 years of his life. He thought about his mother's funeral. He'd stood at her graveside and never heard the priest's words, never heard the sound of dirt hitting her coffin. He'd been 23 years old, and he'd said goodbye in complete silence. What had she tried to tell him in those final days when the cancer took her voice to a whisper? Had there been last words he'd missed because he couldn't hear them? Vincent returned with a laptop. Files are uploading now. Encrypted drive from Caldwell's office server. Dominic opened the laptop and began reading. Medical reports dating back decades. Annual examinations. Detailed notes about his condition. And there, buried in the clinical language, he found it. A notation from 8 years ago. Caldwell had written, "Cerumen impaction observed in the left canal. Recommend irrigation and removal." But the next line made Dominic's blood run cold. Recommendation declined per patient request. Except Dominic had never declined anything. He'd never even been told about the blockage. He scrolled further. More notes. More observations about buildup. More declined recommendations he'd never made. Caldwell had been documenting the blockage for years. Watching it worsen. Doing nothing. And falsifying Dominic's responses to cover his negligence. Or was it negligence? The question gnawed at him as he continued reading. Why would a doctor deliberately keep a patient disabled? What possible benefit could there be? Then he found the financial records. Wire transfers. Large ones. Regular payments from an offshore account to Caldwell's private holdings. Someone had been paying the doctor to keep Dominic deaf. 8. Dr. Marcus Caldwell arrived exactly on time, which told Dominic everything. A guilty man would have been early, anxious, or late, scrambling for excuses. Caldwell walked in with the same professional confidence he'd carried for 2 decades. He didn't know Dominic could hear yet. "Dominic," Caldwell said, his voice measured and calm. "Vincent said it was urgent. Are you experiencing discomfort?" Dominic watched the doctor's face while listening to his voice, looking for the disconnect between what was said and how it was said. He signed in response, keeping up the pretense, routine checkup. "Overdue." Caldwell nodded, opening his medical bag. "Of course. Let me examine you." He approached with the otoscope, the same instrument he'd used for years to look into Dominic's ears and see the blockage he never removed. Dominic let him get close. Let him angle the light into the left ear canal. Caldwell's entire body went rigid. The otoscope trembled slightly in his hand. "Dominic," he said carefully, pulling back, "your ear canal is clear. Completely clear. Who removed the blockage you've been documenting for 8 years?" Dominic's voice cut through the room like a blade. Caldwell stumbled backward. The color drained from his face. His medical bag hit the floor, instruments scattering across hardwood that Dominic could now hear clattering. "You can." Caldwell's voice cracked. "You can hear me. Every word." Dominic stood, and the doctor flinched at the movement. "Every lie you've told. Every recommendation you falsified. Every payment you accepted to keep me disabled." Caldwell's hands came up defensively. "Dominic, please, let me explain." "Explain." Dominic's voice was soft now, which made it more terrifying. "Explain why you watched Cerumen Compact in my ears for nearly a decade and did nothing? Explain why you documented blockages and then wrote that I declined treatment." "It wasn't my choice." Caldwell's composure shattered. The professional mask fell away, revealing naked fear. "They paid me. Threatened me. Said if I ever restored your hearing, they'd kill my family. My daughter was 8 years old when they approached me. What was I supposed to do?" Dominic circled him slowly, processing this new information. "Who paid you?" I don't know their names. It was always anonymous transfers, encrypted messages. They knew everything about me, about my family. They said you were more valuable deaf. Easier to manipulate. Less dangerous. Less dangerous. Dominic let the words hang in the air. Because I couldn't hear the whispers. Couldn't hear conspiracies being planned. Couldn't hear betrayal in someone's voice. Caldwell was crying now, which would have been invisible to the old Dominic. But the new Dominic heard the hitched breathing, the wet sound of tears. I wanted to tell you. God, I wanted to. But they were watching. Always watching. Who were they watching for? Dominic asked. Who benefits from my disability? Caldwell's answer came out as a whisper, but Dominic heard it perfectly. Someone in your own organization. Someone close. The revelation hung in the air like poison gas. Someone in his organization. Someone close. Someone who'd orchestrated 37 years of silence to weaken him, control him, or position themselves for something bigger. Dominic's mind raced through the possibilities. His inner circle was small by design. Vincent, his head of security for 15 years. Marco, his financial advisor. Anthony, who ran the East Side operations. Teresa, who managed the legitimate business fronts. One of them had done this. Names, Dominic said, his voice dangerously calm. Give me names, and I'll consider letting you live long enough to see your daughter graduate. Caldwell shook his head frantically. I never knew. The messages were always vague. Keep him deaf. Maintain the diagnosis. You're being watched. I swear, they never revealed themselves. But you suspected someone. Dominic moved closer, and Caldwell backed against the wall. In 20 years, you must have noticed patterns. Who asked about my medical condition? Who showed unusual interest in my examinations? The doctor's eyes darted to Vincent, who stood by the door. Just a flicker, but Dominic caught it. Vincent caught it too. Boss, Vincent said, his voice steady. You can't seriously think. How long have you worked for me? Dominic asked, not turning around. 15 years. You know this. And in those 15 years, how many times did you accompany me to medical appointments? Vincent's silence was answer enough. He'd been present at nearly every examination. Always in the room. Always watching. Always positioned between Dominic and the doctor. I've been loyal, Vincent said, and Dominic heard something new in his voice now. Desperation trying to masquerade as conviction. Everything I've done has been for you. For me. Dominic finally turned to face him. Or for whoever's been paying you to keep me manageable? Vincent's hand moved toward his weapon. The motion was subtle, but Dominic heard the leather of the holster creak. Heard the slight change in Vincent's breathing. All the tells that had been invisible for decades. Don't. Dominic's command was soft but absolute. You won't clear the holster before I reach you. You don't understand, Vincent said, and now the desperation was naked. You were supposed to stay deaf. Everything was planned. The succession, the territories, the expansion. You were the perfect figurehead, feared, respected, but fundamentally limited. We could have ruled together. We. Dominic took a step forward. Who's we, Vincent? It doesn't matter now. Vincent's voice hardened. You were never supposed to hear again. That wasn't part of the plan. Plans change. Dominic smiled, and it was the coldest expression Vincent had ever seen. 37 years. You've watched me read people through observation alone. Imagine what I can do now that I can hear every tremor in your voice. Every hesitation. Every lie. Vincent drew his weapon. But Dominic was already moving, faster than a man his size should move, and he could hear exactly where Vincent's body was positioned in space. The gun never fired. Vincent hit the floor hard, his weapon skittering across the hardwood. Dominic heard every sound, the impact of body against floor, the clatter of metal, the sharp exhale of pain. He pinned Vincent with one knee, applying just enough pressure to keep him immobilized without crushing him. Not yet, anyway. Names, Dominic said again. All of them. Everyone involved in this. Vincent laughed, blood on his teeth. You think it's just me? This goes higher than you can imagine. People who've been positioned for years, waiting for the right moment. You hearing again changes everything, but it doesn't change enough. Dominic increased the pressure. Vincent gasped. Last chance. Anthony. Marco. Even Teresa. Vincent's voice came out strained. We all agreed. You were more useful deaf. More predictable. We could control the information you received, shape your decisions. Build our own empire inside yours. The betrayal should have shocked him. Instead, Dominic felt something close to satisfaction. He'd always known trust was a liability in his world. Now he had confirmation, and more importantly, he had the advantage they didn't know he possessed. He could hear them now. Every whispered conversation. Every subtle betrayal. Every lie. One more question, Dominic said, leaning close enough that Vincent could feel his breath. Who paid Caldwell? Who set this up 37 years ago? Vincent's expression shifted to something like confusion. What? No. This started 8 years ago. When we realized the blockage was there and could be maintained. We didn't cause your deafness. We just exploited it. 8 years. Not 37. The original hearing loss might have been natural after all, or caused by something else entirely. But the deliberate maintenance of it, the years of preventable silence, that was his own people. Dominic stood, leaving Vincent on the floor. Dr. Caldwell remained pressed against the wall, trembling. You're both going to help me, Dominic said, his voice carrying new authority. Caldwell, you'll continue as my physician. You'll attend every meeting, every dinner, every gathering. And you'll tell me what you hear. Consider it payment for staying alive. He turned to Vincent. And you're going to set up a meeting with Anthony, Marco, and Teresa. Tell them you've handled the situation. Tell them the housemaid has been dealt with and I suspect nothing. Vincent's eyes widened. You can't. I can hear now, Vincent. I can hear fear. I can hear lies. I can hear opportunity. Dominic smiled. They spent 8 years weakening me. Imagine what I'll do to them now that I'm stronger than I've ever been. He walked to the window, listening to the city beyond. Car horns. Distant sirens. The hum of life he'd been denied. Elena Cruz had given him more than hearing. She'd given him a weapon. And Dominic Moretti never wasted a good weapon. 3 days later, Elena received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a check for $500,000 and a note in elegant handwriting, for noticing what others chose to ignore. You saved more than my hearing. DM. She never worked as a maid again. And that's where Dominic Moretti's silence begins to unravel. If you've stayed with us through this journey, it means the story spoke to you. So don't forget to like this video, share it with others who love a good tale, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. Your experiences and support help us bring more stories like this to life. Stay tuned, because there's always another chapter waiting.